A desperate morning Jessica Brooks clutched, her worn leather folder against her chest. As she stepped through the revolving glass doors of the towering skyscraper on Michigan Avenue, the morning sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting geometric patterns across the polished marble floor. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was it. Her last chance at 26. Jessica had sent out over 200 applications in the past 4 months. Every rejection email felt like another door slamming in her face. Her degree in business administration from Northwestern was supposed to open doors, but instead, she found herself drowning in student loan payments while working 3 part-time jobs just to keep her head above water, but the real pressure came from somewhere deeper. Her mother, Patricia, had been diagnosed with a failing kidney 6 months ago. The dialysis treatments were draining what little savings they had left. They needed insurance. They needed stability. They needed a miracle. Today's interview at Henderson & Associates was that miracle. A full-time secretary position with benefits and a salary that could finally let Jessica breathe. She had practiced her answers for hours, pressed her only professional blazer, and arrived 30 minutes early. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt like ascending into another world. When the doors opened, Jessica checked her phone one last time. Henderson & Associates, Suite 4710. The hallway stretched in both directions. Lined with frosted glass doors and expensive artwork, the wrong turn Jessica turned right. Following the numbers, but the hallway seemed to loop back on itself. She passed several doors, each with discreet brass plaques. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother asking how the interview was going, and for just a moment, Jessica's attention wavered. When she looked up, she was standing in front of a massive oak door with no number visible. Through the frosted glass, she could make out the silhouette of someone inside. Assuming this must be the place, Jessica knocked twice. "Come in," a deep voice called from inside. Jessica pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the most breathtaking office she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water glittering in the morning sun. Modern art hung on walls painted in soft gray tones. A massive desk made of dark wood dominated the space. And behind it sat a man who made her forget how to breathe. He was probably in his early 30s. With dark hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it all morning, his charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his white shirt crisp and spotless. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were an unusual shade of green, sharp and assessing. The eyes of someone who missed nothing. Ryan Whitmore looked up from his computer screen and studied the young woman standing in his doorway. She wasn't what he expected, but then again, the whole situation was far from ideal. "You're late," he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made boardrooms go silent. "I expected you an hour ago." Jessica blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, but my interview is scheduled for 9:30. I'm actually early." Ryan stood, and even from across the room, Jessica could tell he was tall. He moved around the desk with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his life. "Interview?" His laugh was short and humorless. "The contracts were signed 3 weeks ago. My lawyers assured me everything was finalized." Jessica's confusion deepened. "Contracts? Mr. Henderson? I think there's been some kind of mistake." "Henderson." Ryan's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm Ryan Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies." The name hit Jessica like cold water. Whitmore Technologies was one of the largest tech companies in the Midwest, worth billions. This wasn't Henderson & Associates. This was the wrong office. The shocking proposal— "I'm so sorry," Jessica stammered, backing toward the door. "I'm looking for Henderson & Associates." I must have gotten turned around. Ryan moved closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face. "Wait, you're Jessica Brooks? 26 years old. Business degree from Northwestern. Originally from Phoenix." Jessica's blood ran cold. "How do you know all that?" "Because," Ryan said slowly, pulling a thick folder from his desk drawer, "you're supposed to be my wife." The words hung in the air like something physical. Jessica actually laughed, a nervous sound that echoed in the vast office. "I think you have me confused with someone else." I came here for a secretary position, not to marry a complete stranger. Ryan spread the papers across his desk, his jaw tight with frustration. According to these documents, Jessica Brooks agreed to marry me in exchange for a $5 million investment in her family's restaurant business. The wedding is scheduled for next month. Jessica moved closer to the desk, her eyes scanning the papers. And there it was, her name, her age, even her college listed correctly. But the family details were all wrong. This Jessica Brooks had a father named Robert, who owned a chain of restaurants across the Southwest. "This isn't me," she said firmly. "My father died when I was 16. My mother is a school teacher. We don't own any restaurants." For the first time since she'd entered the office, Ryan's confident expression faltered. He picked up another document, comparing details, his frown deepening. "This is impossible. My investigators were thorough. The background check was complete." "Then they checked the wrong person," Jessica said, gathering her folder. "I need to find the actual office I'm supposed to be in." "Wait!" Ryan's voice stopped her at the door. "Don't leave yet." Jessica turned back, surprised by the sudden urgency in his tone. Ryan leaned against his desk, his calculating gaze fixed on her. "Tell me about yourself. The real story." "Why?" "Because I need a wife, and the one I arranged for seems to have disappeared." "You need money for your mother's medical bills, I'm guessing? That's why you're desperate enough to interview for a secretary position that pays $20 an hour when you have a degree from Northwestern?" Jessica felt exposed, vulnerable. How did he know about her mother? "I looked you up while we were talking," Ryan admitted, gesturing to his computer. "Your LinkedIn profile mentions taking care of a sick parent. It wasn't hard to connect the dots." "You looked me up?" Jessica's voice rose in disbelief. "The impossible offer business is about information," Ryan said matter-of-factly. "Here's what I know. My grandfather's will requires me to be married by my 33rd birthday, which is in 4 weeks. If I'm not, control of the family trust goes to my cousin Derek, who will destroy the company my grandfather built. The original candidate has vanished. I need someone smart, presentable, and desperate enough to consider an unconventional arrangement." Jessica shook her head. "This is insane. You can't just marry a random person who walked into your office by mistake." "Why not? You're educated, articulate, and clearly need financial help. I can pay off your student loans, cover all your mother's medical expenses, give you enough money to never worry about bills again. 1 year of marriage, all expenses paid, and at the end, a divorce with a generous settlement. Think of it as a very well-paid acting job." Jessica wanted to run. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that this was crazy, that people didn't do things like this in real life. But another part of her, the part that had watched her mother grow weaker each day, the part that woke up at 3 in the morning worrying about bills, that part was listening. "How much?" she heard herself ask. Ryan's eyes glinted with something that might have been respect. $2 million? Tax-free, plus immediate medical coverage for your mother, including a kidney transplant if she needs one, student loans paid in full, and a monthly allowance for personal expenses. The numbers were overwhelming, life-changing, impossible to ignore. "I would need to see everything in writing," Jessica said slowly. "Every detail, every term, every condition. My lawyers can have contracts ready by tomorrow. And your grandfather, the one whose will is forcing this? What happens when he finds out this is all fake?" Ryan's expression softened slightly, the first crack in his professional armor. "My grandfather has 6 months to live. Heart failure. All he wants before he dies is to see me settled and happy. If this arrangement gives him that peace, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Jessica looked at this powerful man who was essentially buying a temporary wife to please a dying grandfather, and she saw something unexpected. Loneliness, desperation masked by control. "I need time to think," she finally said. "You have until tomorrow morning. My driver will pick you up at 9. We'll meet with the lawyers, review the contracts, and you can decide then."
Nice.
Jessica nodded, her mind spinning with possibilities and consequences. As she turned to leave, Ryan called out one more time. "For what it's worth, I think fate might have sent you to the wrong office for a reason." Jessica paused at the door, meeting his intense gaze. "I don't believe in fate, Mr. Whitmore." "Neither did I," he replied. "Until today." Meeting the family, the black Mercedes pulled up too. Jessica's modest apartment building at exactly 9 o'clock the next morning. She had barely slept, spending the entire night researching Ryan Whitmore, reading about his company, and trying to convince herself this was all a strange dream. Her mother had noticed her distraction at dinner. "You're quiet tonight, honey. How did the interview go?" Jessica had smiled and said it went well, unable to tell her mother the truth. How could she explain that instead of interviewing for a secretary position? She'd been offered $2 million to become a temporary wife to a billionaire. Now sitting in the back seat of the luxury car, Jessica clutched her purse and tried to steady her breathing. The driver, an older man named George, made polite conversation about the weather as they navigated through Chicago traffic toward the towering Whitmore Technologies building. Ryan was waiting in a conference room, surrounded by 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked different today, less sharp around the edges. His tie was slightly loosened, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept much either. "Jessica," he greeted her, standing as she entered. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." The next 2 hours were a blur of legal terminology and contract clauses. The lawyers explained everything in excruciating detail. The marriage would last exactly 1 year. They would live together in Ryan's penthouse to maintain appearances. Public displays of affection were expected at social events. Complete medical coverage for her mother would begin immediately, including a place on the transplant list at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. "And if either party wants to end the arrangement early?" Jessica asked, her pen hovering over the signature line. "Then the contract is void and no payment is made," the lead lawyer explained. However, any medical expenses already incurred would remain covered. Jessica looked at Ryan across the table. "What about your grandfather? When do I meet him?" "Tonight," Ryan said. "He's expecting us for dinner at his estate in Lake Forest. I told him I'd been dating someone seriously for the past few months and wanted him to meet you before we made any announcements." "You lied to him?" "I told him what he needed to hear to be happy," Ryan corrected. "There's a difference." Jessica wasn't sure she agreed, but she understood the desperation behind the decision. She thought of her own mother, how far she would go to ease her suffering. Maybe she and Ryan weren't so different after all. "I have one condition," Jessica said firmly. "If your grandfather asks me direct questions, I won't lie to him. I'll dodge. I'll be vague. But I won't look a dying man in the eye and lie." Ryan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Agreed." Jessica took a deep breath and signed her name on the line. The lawyers witnessed it. Ryan signed below her signature, and just like that, her life changed forever. The performance begins that evening. Jessica stood in front of her closet in a panic. She had nothing suitable for dinner at a billionaire's estate. Ryan had anticipated this and sent his assistant, an efficient woman named Claire, with several designer dresses to choose from. "Mr. Whitmore thought the navy blue would suit you," Claire said, holding up an elegant dress that probably cost more than Jessica's monthly rent. Jessica changed, feeling like she was putting on a costume for a play. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, and Claire had provided shoes and jewelry to match. She looked like she belonged in Ryan's world, even if she didn't feel like it. Ryan picked her up himself this time, driving a silver Audi that probably cost more than her student loans. He did a double take when she answered the door. "You look beautiful," he said, and for once, there was no calculation in his voice, just honest observation. "Thank you," Jessica replied, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "Claire has excellent taste." "I have excellent taste," Ryan corrected with a small smile. "Claire just has good execution skills." The drive to Lake Forest took 40 minutes. Ryan spent most of it coaching Jessica on his grandfather's history, his likes and dislikes, the things that would make him happy. "He's traditional," Ryan explained. "He believes in family, loyalty, and true love. He met my grandmother at a church social when they were both 18, and they were married for 52 years before she passed away." "That's beautiful," Jessica said softly. It's why this charade works, Ryan continued. He wants to believe I've found what he had. He wants to see me happy before he dies. And are you? Jessica asked quietly. Happy, I mean? Ryan was silent for a long moment. I don't think I've been truly happy since I was 10 years old. The vulnerability in his admission caught Jessica off guard. Before she could respond, they were pulling through massive iron gates into an estate that looked like something from a movie. Grandfather's blessing William Whitmore was not what Jessica expected. She'd imagined someone cold and intimidating, a patriarch who ruled his empire with an iron fist. Instead, she met a gentle man with kind eyes and a warm smile that reminded her of her own grandfather. So you're the young lady who's stolen my grandson's heart, William said. Taking both of Jessica's hands in his, I can see why. You have honest eyes. Jessica felt guilt twist in her stomach, but remembered her promise. She wouldn't lie directly. Your grandson is quite remarkable, she said carefully. I feel very fortunate to have met him. How did you two meet? William asked as they settled in the elegant dining room. Ryan smoothly launched into a story about a chance encounter at a coffee shop. How Jessica had accidentally grabbed his order. How they'd started talking and discovered they had so much in common. He was a natural storyteller, weaving truth and fiction so seamlessly that even Jessica almost believed him. Throughout dinner, William asked questions, shared stories about Ryan's childhood, and talked about his late wife with such love that Jessica found tears pricking her eyes. This was a man who understood real love, real commitment. And she was helping his grandson deceive him, Grandfather Ryan said, toward the end of the meal. There's something I need to ask you. William's eyes lit up with understanding. You want my blessing to marry her? Ryan nodded, and Jessica noticed his hand was shaking slightly as he reached for his water glass. You have it, my boy, William said, his voice thick with emotion. Your grandmother would have loved her. I can see that she makes you smile in a way I haven't seen since you were a child. That's all I ever wanted for you. The wedding rush. The wedding happened 2 weeks later. Ryan's lawyers had managed to fast-track everything, claiming family emergency circumstances given William's health. It was small but elegant, held in a private room at a luxury hotel overlooking the lake. Jessica wore a designer gown that Claire had helped her select, simple white silk with delicate lace sleeves. Her mother was there, confused but happy, sitting in the front row with an IV port still visible on her arm from her most recent dialysis treatment. Are you sure about this, honey? Patricia had asked that morning. This is all happening so fast. I'm sure, Mom, Jessica had said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. She was sure about the money that would save her mother's life. Everything else was uncertain. Ryan looked devastating in his black tuxedo. Standing at the altar with an expression she couldn't quite read, when she walked down the aisle, his eyes never left her face. The ceremony was brief. They exchanged vows that had been carefully written by the lawyers to be legally binding but emotionally neutral. But when it came time for the kiss, something unexpected happened. Ryan cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. It was supposed to be for show, for the few guests watching, but it felt achingly real. When they pulled apart, Jessica saw confusion in his eyes that mirrored her own feelings. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared, and just like that, Jessica Brooks became Jessica Whitmore. Living the lime moving into Ryan's penthouse was surreal. The apartment occupied the entire top floor of a building in the Gold Coast neighborhood, with views of Lake Michigan that took her breath away. Ryan gave her a quick tour, showing her the master bedroom, the guest room, his office, and the massive kitchen that looked like it had never been used. You can take the master bedroom, he said. I'll use the guest room. That doesn't seem fair. It's your home. It's our home now, Ryan corrected. At least for the next year. Besides, if anyone asks, we'll say we're renovating the master bathroom and temporarily sleeping separately. It was all so calculated, so carefully planned, but over the next few weeks, cracks began to appear in their carefully constructed facade. Jessica discovered that Ryan worked impossible hours. Often still in his office at midnight, she started making dinner, leaving plates for him in the kitchen, even though he insisted she didn't have to. One night, She woke up at 2 in the morning and found him on the couch, tie undone, surrounded by papers. You're going to burn yourself out, she said softly. He looked up, surprised. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I couldn't sleep. She sat down across from him. Can I ask you something? Why do you work so hard? You've already proven yourself. The company is successful. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Because if I stop, I'll have to think about everything else. The loneliness. The fact that my parents never wanted a child. They wanted an heir. The reality that the only person who ever truly loved me is dying. Jessica's heart ached at the raw honesty in his voice. Without thinking, she reached across and took his hand. I'm here, she said simply. I know this isn't real, but I'm here. Ryan looked down at their joined hands, his thumb absently stroking her knuckles. Sometimes I forget it's not real. The first cracks their first public appearance as a married couple was at a charity gala 3 weeks after the wedding. Jessica wore a stunning red gown that Ryan had personally selected, and she had to admit they looked good together in the mirror. At the event, Ryan was the perfect husband. His hand rested on the small of her back. He introduced her with pride. He laughed at her jokes like they were the funniest things he'd ever heard. But Jessica was learning to read him now. She could see the tension in his shoulders. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when certain people approached. One of those people was Derek Whitmore, Ryan's cousin and rival for control of the family company. He was handsome in a polished way, with blonde hair and a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Ryan, congratulations on your sudden marriage, Derek said, his tone dripping with false sincerity. How convenient that you found true love right before grandfather's deadline. Some of us don't need a deadline to find happiness, Ryan replied coolly. Derek turned his attention to Jessica, his eyes assessing. And you, Jessica Brooks. Or should I say Whitmore? Tell me, what does a secretary from Phoenix see in a workaholic billionaire? Jessica felt her face flush, but before she could respond, Ryan stepped closer, his body language protective. That's my wife you're speaking to. Of course, Derek smiled. I'm just curious about this whirlwind romance. It all seems so convenient. After Derek walked away, Jessica could feel Ryan trembling with suppressed anger. He knows, Jessica whispered, or at least suspects. Derek always suspects, Ryan said. But suspicion isn't proof. Unexpected feelings, despite the complications, life began to develop a rhythm. Jessica spent her mornings visiting her mother, whose health was improving dramatically thanks to the excellent medical care. The doctors had found a kidney match. Surgery was scheduled for the following month. Her afternoons were spent learning to navigate Ryan's world, taking etiquette lessons from Claire, attending charity committee meetings, playing the part of the wealthy CEO's wife. But it was the evenings she cherished most. Ryan started coming home earlier, claiming he wanted to maintain appearances. They would have dinner together, sometimes cooking side by side in the massive kitchen. Talking about their days, Jessica learned that Ryan loved old movies and terrible puns. He learned that she could beat him at chess and that she sang off-key in the shower. They developed inside jokes and comfortable silences. One night, about 6 weeks into their arrangement, they were watching a classic film when Jessica fell asleep on the couch. Her head dropping onto Ryan's shoulder, Ryan looked down at her peaceful face, and something shifted in his chest. This was supposed to be simple, a business transaction. But somewhere between the late-night conversations and the quiet dinners, between her terrible singing and her brilliant smile, he'd started to fall for his fake wife, and that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The crisis point, everything changed the night William collapsed. Ryan got the call at 11 p.m., and Jessica heard him on the phone, his voice breaking in a way she'd never heard before. We have to go, he said, his face pale. Grandfather's in the hospital. They rushed to Northwestern Memorial, Jessica still in her pajamas under Ryan's jacket. William had suffered a major heart attack. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but his age and previous conditions made recovery uncertain. Ryan sat by his grandfather's bedside all night, holding the old man's hand, and Jessica sat beside him, offering silent support. I'm sorry, William whispered when he woke up briefly. I wanted to see you truly happy before I left." "You will," Ryan said fiercely. "You're going to be fine." But William's wise eyes moved to Jessica, and she saw understanding there that made her breath catch. "Ryan," William said softly, "life is too short for pretending. If you found something real, don't let fear make you throw it away." After William fell back asleep, Ryan turned to Jessica, his defenses completely down. "He knows," Ryan said quietly. "He's known all along. How? Because he's my grandfather? He knows me better than anyone." Ryan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "He let me think I was fooling him because he hoped," trailed off. "Hoped what?" Jessica prompted gently. "That somewhere in the pretending, I'd find something real." Jessica stood and crossed to him, her heart pounding. "And did you?" Ryan turned to face her, and in his eyes, she saw the same confusion and longing that had been building in her own heart for weeks. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to love someone without trying to control everything. I don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling weak." But Jessica took his hand. "Then we'll figure it out together. No contracts, no lawyers, just us." He stopped, struggling with words that had never come easily to him. "This wasn't supposed to be real, but it is," she said softly. "At least it is for me. I love you, Ryan. Not your money, not your company, just you. The man who works too hard, who makes terrible puns, who sits up all night reading to his grandfather. That's who I fell in love with." Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm going to mess this up," he whispered into her hair. "Probably," she agreed. "And I'll mess it up too. But we'll mess it up together." When he kissed her this time, there was nothing calculated about it. It was desperate and genuine, full of fear and hope and the terrifying possibility of real love. The storm breaks. The scandal hit 3 days after William's health scare. Someone had leaked details about Jessica's background to the media. The headlines were brutal. "Billionaire's bride, love or opportunism?" From secretary to CEO's wife, the Cinderella story with a price tag. Jessica woke up to her phone exploding with notifications. News vans were parked outside the building. Her social media was flooded with messages from reporters and trolls alike. Ryan was already in the kitchen. His jaw clenched as he scrolled through tablet after tablet, each one showing a different article dissecting their marriage. "Derek," he said simply when Jessica appeared. "He hired investigators. They found everything. Your job interviews, your mother's medical bills, the timing of our marriage." Jessica felt sick. "What do we do?" "My PR team is working on damage control, but—" He set down the tablet and looked at her with exhausted eyes. "Jessica, I need you to understand something. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to paint you as a gold digger who trapped me. They're going to question every moment of our relationship." "Let them," Jessica said, surprising herself with her firmness. "I know the truth." "You know the truth. That's what matters, is it?" Ryan asked quietly. "Because the board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Derek's pushing for a vote of no confidence. He's arguing that my judgment is compromised, that I made a reckless decision based on desperation rather than sound leadership." "Did you?" Jessica asked. "Make a reckless decision?" Ryan crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. "Yes, and it's the best decision I ever made." Fighting back together, the board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. the following day. Ryan spent the morning in strategy sessions with his lawyers and advisors preparing his defense. Jessica felt useless, trapped in the penthouse while reporters camped outside. Claire arrived at noon with a garment bag. "Mr. Whitmore asked me to bring this," she said, unzipping it to reveal a powerful charcoal suit with a silk blouse. "He wants you at the meeting, me." "But I'm not his wife," Claire interrupted gently. "And he needs you there." The boardroom at Whitmore Technologies was intimidating. All dark wood and leather chairs occupied by powerful people who looked at Jessica like she was an intruder. Derek sat at the far end, confidence radiating from every pore. Ryan stood at the head of the table, and Jessica took a seat beside him, her presence a silent statement of unity. "Let's get to the point," Derek began. "Ryan's personal life has become a liability. This marriage, rushed and suspicious, combined with recent distraction from duties, shows compromised judgment. The company needs stable leadership. Stable leadership, Ryan countered, is what I've provided for 8 years. Under my guidance, Whitmore Technologies has tripled in value. We've expanded into 6 new markets. Our employee satisfaction rating is the highest in the industry. All true, Derek acknowledged. But that was before you let personal desperation drive you into a questionable marriage that's now embarrassing the company publicly. Jessica had heard enough. She stood, her heart pounding, but her voice was steady. May I say something? The board members looked surprised, but Ryan nodded, trust clear in his eyes. Yes, our marriage happened quickly, Jessica began. Yes, I came from modest circumstances, and yes, Ryan's resources have helped my family. But love doesn't follow a schedule. Real relationships don't wait for convenient timing. She turned to face Derek directly. You're presenting our marriage as a calculated business move. But let me ask you something. If Ryan was cold and calculating enough to fake a marriage for inheritance purposes, wouldn't he have done it perfectly? Wouldn't he have chosen someone from your world? Someone whose background couldn't be questioned? Murmurs rippled through the room. Instead, Jessica continued, he chose someone real. Someone who challenges him, who makes him laugh, who reminds him that life is more than quarterly reports and stock prices. Is that really the behavior of someone with compromised judgment? Or is it the behavior of someone who's finally learning to be human? Ryan was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Something between awe and love. The truth is, Jessica finished. Meeting the eyes of each board member, Ryan Whitmore is a better leader now than he was a year ago. He's more empathetic, more balanced, more connected to the people he serves. If you can't see that his personal growth has strengthened rather than weakened his professional capabilities, then perhaps you're the ones with compromised judgment. Then, unexpectedly, one of the older board members, a woman named Patricia Chen, began to clap. Others joined in. Derek's face had gone red. This is ridiculous. She's not even qualified to speak here. She's more qualified than you are to speak about character, Ryan said quietly. The vote, please. When the count was finished, Ryan had retained his position by a comfortable margin. Derek stormed out, his power play having failed spectacularly. The real vows that night. Ryan and Jessica stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below them. The immediate crisis had passed, but they both knew everything had changed. Thank you, Ryan said quietly. For what you said in there. You didn't have to defend me. Yes, I did, Jessica replied. Because everything I said was true. You are a better man than you think you are. Ryan turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Jessica, I need to tell you something. That contract we signed, the one that was supposed to end after a year with a clean break and a settlement. I know, Jessica interrupted. I don't care about the contract anymore. Neither do I, Ryan said. Because somewhere between the fake dates and the pretend smiles, I fell completely in love with you. The real you. Not the woman I hired to play a part, but the woman who sings off-key in the shower and beats me at chess and calls me out when I'm being insufferable. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. I love you too. I think I have since that first night when you admitted you hadn't been happy since you were 10 years old. I want to do this right, Ryan said. And suddenly he was kneeling on the balcony, pulling a small box from his pocket. We got married for all the wrong reasons. Let me ask you properly. Jessica Brooks Whitmore, will you marry me? For real this time. No contracts, no conditions, just love and partnership, and the promise to figure this out together. The ring was different from the one he'd given her for the fake wedding. That one had been large and showy. This one was delicate and beautiful, a single diamond on a simple band. Yes, Jessica laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you again. For real this time. They kissed as the city sparkled around them. And for the first time, neither of them was thinking about what they were supposed to do or how things were supposed to look. They were just two people in love, finally free from the weight of pretending new life 2 months later. Jessica stood in the bathroom of the penthouse, staring at a pregnancy test with 2 clear pink lines. Her hands were shaking. She and Ryan had been so focused on transitioning from fake marriage to real relationship that they hadn't been as careful as they should have been. Now, staring at the positive test, Jessica felt a complex swirl of emotions. Fear, joy, uncertainty, and overwhelming love. When Ryan came home that evening, she was waiting in the living room, the test in a small gift box. "What's this?" he asked, his tie already loosened after a long day. "Just open it," she said, her voice trembling. She watched his face as he opened the box. Saw confusion turn to understanding, turn to absolute wonder. "We're having a baby," she confirmed. Ryan's response was immediate and overwhelming. He dropped the box, crossed to her in 2 strides, and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around while laughing with pure joy. "We're having a baby," he repeated, his voice cracking with emotion. "Jessica, we're going to be parents." "I know you didn't plan for this," she started, but he silenced her with a kiss. "The best things in my life have been unplanned," he said. "Meeting you was unplanned. Falling in love with you was unplanned. This baby is just continuing the tradition." The blessing William was still weak, but recovering slowly at his estate. When Ryan and Jessica arrived to tell him the news, they found him in his favorite chair in the library. "Reading, grandfather?" Ryan said, kneeling beside the chair. "We have something to tell you. You're going to be a great-grandfather," Jessica added, unable to contain her smile. William's reaction was everything they could have hoped for. Tears streamed down his weathered face as he pulled them both into a hug. "A great-grandchild," he whispered. "Your grandmother would have been over the moon, we were thinking," Ryan said hesitantly. "If it's a boy, we'd like to name him William. If you're okay with that, or if it's a girl, Hope Marie," Jessica added. Hope for new beginnings, and Marie after Ryan's grandmother. William couldn't speak for a moment, overcome with emotion. When he finally found his voice, it was soft but firm. "I knew that first night," he admitted. "When you two came to dinner, I knew the marriage was arranged. I could see it in how carefully you both moved around each other, how rehearsed your story sounded." Ryan and Jessica exchanged shocked glances. "But I also saw something else," William continued. "Potential, possibility. 2 people who could be perfect for each other if they just let themselves be real. So I played along with your charade, hoping that what started as pretend would become genuine." "You manipulated us," Ryan said. But there was no anger in his voice, only amused respect. "I gave you an opportunity," William corrected. "You two did the rest yourselves. Sometimes love needs a little push to get started, even if that push comes in an unusual form." Full circle, 7 months later, Jessica went into labor at 3 in the morning. Ryan, for all his business acumen and ability to stay calm under pressure, completely panicked. "Is this normal? Should you be in this much pain? Should we call another doctor? Maybe we should go to the hospital now instead of waiting." He rambled as Jessica breathed through contractions. "Ryan," she said firmly between breaths, "I love you, but if you don't calm down, I'm going to hurt you." The delivery was long but ultimately smooth. At 6:47 p.m., Hope Marie Whitmore entered the world. Screaming with impressive volume and already showing signs of having her father's determined personality. Ryan held his daughter for the first time with tears streaming down his face. All his usual composure completely gone. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice full of wonder. "Jessica, she's absolutely perfect." "She looks like you," Jessica said from the hospital bed, exhausted but glowing. "She has your nose," Ryan countered. "And I'm pretty sure that stubborn expression is all you." William arrived an hour later, looking frailer than ever, but with eyes full of life and joy. He held his great-granddaughter with gentle hands, whispering a blessing over her. "Welcome to the family, little Hope," he said softly. "You're going to do great things. I can already tell." The real ending. 6 weeks later, Ryan came home to find Jessica in the nursery, rocking Hope while humming softly. He stood in the doorway watching them and was struck by the profound gratitude he felt. "Do you ever think about how this all started?" he asked quietly. Jessica looked up and smiled. "You mean when I walked into the wrong office?" "That wrong turn changed everything." "It was the right turn," Jessica corrected. I just didn't know it yet. Ryan crossed to them, wrapping his arms around both his wife and daughter. I was going to ask you something. The contract technically expires next month. We've been married for a year. Jessica's heart skipped a beat. And I want to tear it up, Ryan said. I want to throw away every clause and condition and start fresh. Will you stay married to me not because of money or agreements or obligation, but because you want to build a life together? I thought we already were, Jessica said, touching his face gently. We are. But I want it to be official. No more shadows of that original arrangement hanging over us. Just us choosing each other every day. Then yes, Jessica said. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this beautiful, messy, unplanned life we've created. They kissed softly, careful not to wake the baby sleeping between them. Epilogue. 3 years later, Jessica stood in the massive office on the 47th floor, the one where her life had changed 3 years ago. But now, instead of feeling like an intruder, she felt at home. The office had changed. Where once there had been sterile corporate art, now there were family photos. Jessica and Ryan on their second wedding day, the real one, where they'd renewed their vows in front of just family. Hope taking her first steps. William holding his great-granddaughter just weeks before he'd passed away peacefully in his sleep. Having gotten his wish to see Ryan truly happy, Ryan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. At 3 years old, Hope was in preschool, giving them a rare moment of quiet. Remembering? He asked. How could I forget? I came here looking for a secretary job and ended up with a husband and a baby. Best wrong turn ever, Ryan murmured. Kissing her neck, no, Jessica said thoughtfully. I was cleaning out some boxes yesterday and found that original contract. Did you burn it? I thought about it. But then I realized it's part of our story. The messy, complicated, beautiful beginning. No. What did you do with it? Jessica turned in his arms, smiling up at him. I put it in Hope's baby book. Someday, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the whole story. How her parents made a business deal that turned into the greatest love of our lives. She's going to think we're crazy, Ryan said. But he was smiling. She'd think we're romantic, Jessica countered. Because we are. We're proof that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming. Ryan kissed her deeply, the kind of kiss that still made her heart race after 3 years. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Jessica Whitmore. Thank you for walking into the wrong office. I love you too, she replied. And for the record, it was exactly the right office. I just didn't know I was looking for you. Outside the window, Chicago stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere in the city, other people were making wrong turns that would lead to right places, taking chances that would change their lives, finding love in the most unexpected ways. But in that moment, in that office where it had all begun, Ryan and Jessica Whitmore simply held each other, grateful for every twist of fate that had brought them together. Because sometimes, the best love stories start with a mistake.